Next on Unsolved Mysteries. A journalist is about to blow the lid on some government corruption, but is found dead. His wrist slashed 12 times by a razor blade. Mutant, monster, or figment of some overheated imaginations. What is this strange creature terrorizing West Virginia? Some call it the Mothman. Legend has it that just 2 miles from downtown LA, a treasure worth millions is just waiting to be found. And a flower delivery proves fatal for a woman in Georgia. 5 cases, some without endings. Our team is working on them, and perhaps you can help. I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. Martinsburg, West Virginia.
Housekeeping.
It starts off like any other workday at the local Sheraton Hotel. The housekeeper opens one of the rooms to clean it. Nothing prepares her for what she finds inside room 517. Hotel guest Danny Casolaro is lying in a tub of bloody water. Danny is an investigative journalist from Fairfax, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, D.C. He is clearly dead.
What do you got here?
It seems pretty clear it's a suicide.
Martinsburg police arrive on the scene.
About a dozen slash marks on the wrist.
In the room, they find a suicide note and a single razor blade in the bathtub. Danny's wrists have been slashed 12 times. 8 cuts on his left wrist and 4 cuts on his right. One cut is so deep, it severed a tendon. There are no signs of a struggle. Danny's body is taken to a local funeral home later that afternoon. But strangely, Danny's family and friends aren't told about his death until 2 days later.
From the moment we heard about his reported suicide, we doubted it, questioned it, wondered about it. It was not his nature to kill himself, so we were suspicious from the first. And then the deeper we dug into it, the more suspicious we became.
Just a few days before Danny Casolaro died, he told friends that he was on the verge of breaking a huge story. Danny claimed to have proof that some officials in the U.S. Justice Department were corrupt. Many suspect that Danny's death was not a suicide. They believe that he was murdered because he was the man who knew too much.
First of all, when was the promise software developed and what was it for?
Danny's advocates believe that the true story of Danny's death began when he interviewed Bill and Nancy Hamilton. They were the owners of a computer software company called Unsolved. They had developed revolutionary software to speed up case management for law enforcement agencies. The U.S. Justice Department was a major client.
What we'll do first is bring up a menu.
At first, the program was a success, but then something changed.
The Justice Department began to withhold payments from Inslaw, and they withheld a couple of $1 million from Inslaw, drove Inslaw into Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Inslaw then discovered that the Canadian government was also using their software, even though they hadn't paid for it.
What sort of funny things started happening?
Bill and Nancy Hamilton told Danny that they were confused by what was happening until they talked to a man named Michael Riconosciuto. He claimed to have worked for the CIA and knew about the illegal sales of Inslaw's software.
Well, the parties that were involved in the distribution of this software were involved in covert operations, and they were involved in Nicaragua and Central America, and they were involved in operations in the Middle East. And yes, I have direct knowledge of funds from the sale of this product being used to finance those operations.
Then Congress began to hear about the Inslaw scandal. The House Judiciary Committee opened a formal investigation.
The report describes the committee's investigation into serious allegations that high-level Department of Justice officials were involved in a criminal conspiracy to force Inslaw, a small computer company, out of business, steal its primary asset.
Michael Riconosciuto began telling his story to committee investigators. Within a week, Justice Department agents arrested Riconosciuto on drug charges.
The committee will reconvene.
Michael's drug conviction hurt his credibility, but another witness with perfect credentials stepped forward. His name was Elliot Richardson. He was also Richard Nixon's Attorney General until he resigned rather than participate in the Watergate cover-up. He was now the lawyer for Inslaw.
In the case of Inslaw, there's a spreading radius of circumstantial evidence which, at its outer reaches, entails a far more sinister kind of conspiracy than anything revealed in Watergate.
Danny Casolaro now believed he had uncovered a sprawling criminal network. He said it was made up of U.S. officials, organized crime members, and intelligence agents. He called it the Octopus.
You have pretty direct connections with some of the underworld crime figures, not only...
Danny Casolaro stepped into a world that he didn't belong in. The type of people that he became involved with lie just as a matter of course. They lie, they cheat. There are people who've been involved in numerous murders, dealing drugs, dealing arms. And Danny Casolaro thought he could find his way through this labyrinth by himself. And that was a mistake.
They're the guys that I've been working with, my contacts, and they're calling me and saying, look, Danny, you're getting too close. You're gonna get hurt. Back off.
A week before he died, Danny told his brother Tony that he had been receiving death threats.
I don't recognize their voices. I don't know where they're coming from. They're just saying, you are gonna die. I'll tell you this, though, when I go to Martinsburg, if something happens to me or if I should get hurt, don't believe it's an accident.
Danny arrived in Martinsburg with all of his notes and documents 2 days before he died. He was scheduled to meet with several informants and complete his investigation. He believed one of these new contacts would deliver key evidence about the finances of the Octopus.
Danny had a source inside the IRS's computer data center that was giving him hard copy printouts of IRS information on certain specific targets that Danny was after.
William Turner?
And you are?
Danny Casolaro?
Get in.
The day before he died, Danny met with William Turner. He was a former employee of a major defense contractor.
You have some documentation?
You have some for me?
According to Turner, he gave Danny papers showing the corruption that Danny believed was tied to the Octopus. But within 24 hours, Danny Casolaro was dead. There was no sign of Turner's documents or Danny's research papers. To this day, not one of those papers has been found. The media was all over the story. West Virginia authorities opened a formal investigation and ordered an autopsy.
Assistant medical examiner for the state of West Virginia. He said, well, you know, he's already been embalmed, and that's going to make it a little difficult. And I said, what are you talking about? He's already been embalmed. And he said, well, he was embalmed apparently already. He said, you didn't know that? I said, absolutely not. I said, we didn't give any permission.
I'm now going to cut the sutures to examine the wounds.
The autopsy confirmed that Danny had bled to death from the 12 razor cuts. But more importantly, it revealed that Danny wasn't alone in his hotel room during his last moments.
There was, on the actual autopsy report, described a bruise on the arm and a bruise on the head which were never accounted for. I was told there were no signs of any struggle. Additionally, the tips of 3 fingernails were missing from one hand.
When Danny's hotel room was cleaned the day after his death by a professional cleaning crew, important evidence was destroyed. One of the housekeepers saw 2 bloody towels in the bathroom minutes after Danny's body was found. It looked like they were used to wipe blood off the bathroom floor.
The police reports of the investigation are certainly not professional. Fingerprints get lost, messed up. They drain the tub without a strainer. Sloppy work. Police have a rule in this country, and government people have a rule. When they screw up, they cover up. Sad but true. Do I think they covered up here? Yes, I do.
There is enough evidence that he was murdered so that there should have been a much more intensive investigation than there has been. All that I do know makes me believe that it was more likely that he was murdered than that he committed suicide.
Even Danny's funeral was clouded by mystery. At the funeral, a highly decorated military officer arrived in a limousine near the end of the service. No one recognized him. The man carefully placed a medal on the casket just before it was lowered into the ground.
And we went back to Frances's house, Danny's mother's house, and I said, Frances, who was the military man? And she said, I thought you'd know. And we asked everyone there. There had to be 50 people at Frances's house. No one knew who they were. No one.
A short time later, the official investigation of Danny Casolaro's death was closed. West Virginia authorities and Department of Justice representatives declined to participate in this story. Many of Danny's family and friends remain convinced that he did not commit suicide. If you have any information, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Coming up, meet the Mothman, a mysterious red-eyed creature said to roam the West Virginia woods. But next, the story of 2 women whose scam of seduction and theft earned them the nicknames of Thelma and Louise. Recently, we profiled a pair of cunning criminals. 2 women the police call the real-life Thelma and Louise. If you passed them on the road, you'd think they were just good friends out for a joyride. But Rose Turford and Carolyn Stevens stole more than $250,000 over 3 months from at least 10 men. Their MO was simple, yet devious. Rose and Carolyn lured their victims to hotel rooms and then robbed them.
Rose and Carolyn, from the onset, wanted to be the real-life Thelma and Louise. They wanted to experience that thrill, and the only thing is I don't believe they ever considered what they were going to do to their families.
A few months later, they were finally arrested in Houston. Their families put up everything they owned to post the $500,000 bail. But as soon as they were released, Thelma and Louise disappeared. Update. 5 months later, a T-shirt just like this one led to the capture of the Thelma and Louise bandits in Toronto, Canada. Police found Rose Turford working in a telemarketing firm. Within 24 hours, both she and Carolyn Stevens were back in custody.
I think that anyone who does a series of aggravated robberies are nothing more than criminals. They're not anything special. They're not anything to admire. They're just robbers.
Turford and Stevens were each charged with 4 counts of aggravated robbery and 1 count of aggravated kidnapping. Carolyn Stevens pleaded guilty to the robbery charges and was sentenced to 10 years. She served 9 and was released. Rose Turford, on the other hand, took a chance. She pleaded not guilty, but the jury didn't buy it. She was convicted and sentenced to 30 years. She served her time and has been released. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. These crumbling buildings are home to one of the most bizarre and terrifying creatures ever to walk the earth. Or at least, that's what some would have you believe.
I could see something standing there that looked like a man, but yet it wasn't a man. It was some kind of a creature.
What is that? Stood 7 feet tall or better, enormous glowing red eyes, bat-like wings, man-like legs.
That was the biggest, by far, and the ugliest bird, and I do mean bird, I've ever seen in my life. And I hope in this lifetime I never see it or anything like it again.
You have your percentage of citizens who feel that it was 101% a hoax, you know. I personally think that there was something up there that scared the wits out of most of the people who came face to face with it.
What is this strange creature? No one knows for sure. But one thing is certain. Hundreds of ordinary people have seen something in the woods that they can't explain. They call it the Mothman. One fall evening, Linda Scarberry, her husband, and another couple took a drive to an area called the TNT. It got its nickname because in World War II, it was an ammunition factory. It was here that the Mothman made his first appearance.
Oh my God, what?
As they approached it, the headlights hit it and the red eyes were prominent. It was a very huge creature with a wingspan estimated 8 to 10 to 12 feet.
There it is. There it is. Oh, go, get out!
When the Mothman let out a horrible screech, the two couples fled. Even as they drove at almost 100 miles per hour, the creature kept up with them.
It flew above the car, gliding from side to side, but never getting in front of the car. And as they approached the lights of the city, the creature backed off and fled.
The next day, Marcella Bennett left her brother's house with her 4-year-old daughter.
When I got to the car and reached for the door handle, then I saw what looked like legs.
Go back to the house!
I kept looking from the feet up, and when I did, I could see that I was looking at something that I had never saw before.
Come back to the house!
The creature looked like a man, but it was over 6 foot tall, and it had feathers instead of skin. The way it looked, it was something I never, in my wildest imagination, would have ever thought that would be standing out there.
Then, as quickly as it appeared, the Mothman vanished. Tom Urey was driving near the TNT factory just a few days later. He is one of only a few people who have seen the Mothman during the day.
I caught something out of the corner of my eye. It looked like a helicopter coming over the trees at first. Until I saw it, it was a bird, a huge bird, that proceeded to circle my car. Every time it would make a loop, it would get lower, 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 and I'm getting a little bit scared, you know. This thing's curious about my car, and I sure didn't want to be breakfast.
The number of Mothman sightings increased over the next year. Eyewitnesses describe the creature in the same way. Part man, part bird with huge wings and hypnotic red eyes. However, others dismiss the so-called Mothman as nothing more than a large bird called the sandhill crane.
Well, the sandhill crane stands nearly as tall as a man and has 2 red patches of flesh that under extraordinary circumstances might be mistaken for red eyes. But none of the rest of the bird fits the description, not even close.
Could the Mothman simply have been a large, frightening bird? Or something more sinister.
Residents of Point Pleasant would go out on farms and find their animals dead, and maybe just the blood out or the heart going. Someone had removed the heart of the animal.
With mutilated animals came another strange phenomenon. Visits from strangers dressed entirely in black, from head to toe.
The men in black were strange, out-of-town visitors who seemed to want to pretty much just quiet everything down. They would show up in people's doorsteps and show up at their house at night and basically just say, hey, you know, let's just keep quiet for now. And they terrified a lot of the original witnesses.
Some believe these strangers may know the secret behind the mysterious creature.
One of their theories is that the Mothman was a government experiment gone awry, and it escaped, which would explain a little bit of the men in black. A lot of people tied all that in with the government as a government experiment.
One final theory focused on the TNT region itself. Before this area was a weapons factory, it was a bird sanctuary.
One of the theories is that the Mothman is a mutant bird which was created from the TNT residue left over from the plants during the World War II effort and combined with the genes of the animals during 1966 and formed a mutant bird type creature.
Whatever the explanation, the Mothman terrified everyone who saw it. And some even believed that the creature caused Point Pleasant's greatest tragedy. After nearly a year of Mothman sightings, the Silver Bridge leading out of town suddenly collapsed. 46 people were killed. One witness claims to have seen the Mothman on the bridge just before it crumbled. It's been years since anyone has seen the Mothman, but it has been the subject of books and even a major motion picture with Richard Gere.
The Mothman has always been there, and it'll always be there. It'll never go away. It's a legend. It's a local legend, and now it's a worldwide legend. It'll never fade away.
The Mothman is now more famous than ever. He has scared a lot of people, real or not. Next, a treasure hunt near downtown Los Angeles yields surprising discoveries. Legends of buried treasure usually take us to remote locations, but it is possible that there's a treasure worth millions of dollars hidden just 2 miles from the heart of America's second largest city. Los Angeles, California. It's hard to believe that 160 years ago, this was just a quiet, dusty pueblo. But that suddenly changed in 1846. War erupted between Mexico and the United States, and it's believed that wealthy Angelenos panicked as the fighting got closer. According to legend, some dug elaborate escape tunnels. Others buried their family fortunes.
This was the best thing that they could do to protect their valuables at the time, and it was a customary way because there were no banks. And if you wanted to protect something, bury it, hide it.
Since then, stories have circulated that many families did not return for their valuables. That means they may still be there. 2 sisters looking for a long-lost family treasure hired Roy Rausch.
Around a lot. You know, this looks like the spot right in here.
Years ago, they had searched for the treasure with their father.
Right up in there.
Now, they were able to find a spot that looked familiar.
Well, the first thing that attracted my attention was on the side of a sandstone bluff were 3 indentations. The holes seemed to be rather symmetrical and rather smooth, and looked like it could be man-made. So keeping that in mind, I'm now looking around for some other signs and symbols. About 75 feet away, on the side of the hill, I discovered some initials carved in the side of another rock.
Roy spotted evidence of an old tunnel, halfway between the two signs.
Obviously, it was a treasure shaft. There was no other reason for this hole being there.
It seemed simple. Remove dirt, claim treasure. They had permits from park officials, but Roy suggested they dig at night to keep the location a secret.
We got down about 25 feet, and I got a fairly good signal right in the center of the hole. We all got excited because metal detectors don't lie in a situation like that.
The instrument had indeed detected buried artifacts, but they were not exactly what Roy Rausch was looking for.
We uncovered two very old flashlight batteries. The oldest flashlight batteries I'd ever seen.
The digging continued. 30 feet further into the tunnel, they found the frayed end of a very old, crudely made rope.
So after finding the two old flashlight batteries and the piece of rope, it was quite obvious that somebody else had already beat us to the treasure years before. It was a combination of gratification and disappointment. We had correctly found a treasure tunnel and had excavated it. But the disappointment was that after all the time and money and work and effort that we put into it, we had nothing to show for our efforts except a couple of old flashlight batteries and a piece of rope.
Even though he came up empty-handed, Roy believes there are still buried treasures in Elysian Park. To test that theory, we call a nonprofit group that conducts both ocean and ground searches.
All right, guys, let's go.
A sensing device sends out radar waves as it's dragged across the field. A cross-section of what lies underground shows up on this monitor. After the survey is complete, computers translate the information. Here's what they found. These marks suggest it's a 30-foot deep vertical tunnel. They also detected an object less than 10 feet below the surface. It appears to be made of solid metal.
If there is treasure here, I would prefer to see it stay here. I'd like to keep that mystery alive. I think it adds to the mystique of this park. I think it's something that people would probably continue to talk about in the future and help to keep the mystique of the treasure that might be in Elysian Park alive.
Obtaining a permit to excavate in Los Angeles is even more difficult than finding the buried treasure. And digging without a permit is against the law. Violators are subject to arrest and could end up in jail rather than on Easy Street. Next, flowers weren't the only thing this man delivered to a woman in Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia. Lita McClinton Sullivan lies dead in the doorway of her home. She's the daughter of one of Georgia's most politically prominent African-American families. Her husband is James Sullivan, heir to a $1 million family fortune. Who killed Lita Sullivan? Some thought she was the victim of a random robbery attempt. Others believed her own husband hired someone to kill her. The only clue was a dozen blood-spattered roses. James Sullivan met Lita McClinton at a mall in Atlanta where she was training to be a clothing buyer for a department store.
Excuse me.
Hi.
Hi.
Can I help you find something?
James was refined and charming, and Lita soon fell in love.
How about a trip to Paris?
Lita's parents were afraid that he was marrying their daughter because of the family's political power.
I think that was one of his attractions to Lita. He needed someone who could give him a better social standing and status.
Eventually, the couple moved into this home in Palm Beach, Florida.
I'm going back to work. You can't stop me.
Lita's parents said that Sullivan tried to control every aspect of their daughter's life.
He had originally said that he did not want her to work, but then he would give her such a small budget that it was no way practical to, quote, buy groceries, to take care of the household and things like that.
Finally, Lita filed for divorce and moved into a townhouse they owned in Atlanta. Her family said that Sullivan was furious and was afraid that he would lose millions in a divorce settlement. Lita was murdered the day she was scheduled to testify in her divorce case. Police discovered that a witness saw a man coming to her door carrying a box of flowers.
Who is it?
Flowers for Lita Sullivan? Are you Lita Sullivan?
Yes.
No one was able to identify the man seen running from Lita's porch. James was at their home in Palm Beach at the time of the killing, but his alibi didn't rule out the possibility of a contract hit.
40 minutes later, Jim Sullivan receives a collect phone call from outside Atlanta. And when I retraced the time from Buckhead, where Lita was murdered, to where the phone booth was, it was exactly 40 minutes. I believe the killer was calling Sullivan and telling him that the job is done.
Police traced the flowers to a nearby flower shop. The clerk remembered a very nervous man buying them just before the murder. Telephone records also showed that just before the murder, calls were made to Sullivan's home. They were traced to 3 men who had checked into a Georgia motel using fake IDs. Police thought there was enough evidence to go to trial, but they were wrong. The judge dismissed the case for lack of evidence. A relieved James Sullivan spoke to the press.
I want everyone listening to this to know that I am absolutely innocent. I had nothing to do with Lita's death. Her death was a great tragedy, and I thank God and my attorneys that this ordeal is over.
Lita's family believed that Sullivan was getting away with murder.
Jim had Lita killed because of money. Jim loved money.
Just 8 months after Lita's murder, Sullivan married again.
Perfect.
His bride's name was Suki Rogers. But 3 years later, Suki and Sullivan were involved in their own bitter divorce. Suki told police that Sullivan admitted to her that he hired someone to kill Lita. The McClintons filed a $4 million civil suit against Sullivan and won.
We're not interested in the money. It was really knowing that Jim was the cause of our daughter's death, and we wanted to bring him to trial.
Then, 11 years after Lita was killed, Georgia investigators got the break they needed. They arrested a man who supposedly helped set up Lita's murder.
I had a business arrangement with Mr. Sullivan.
The man claimed that Sullivan had contracted the killing. Finally, a warrant was issued for Sullivan's arrest. He was charged with murder and aggravated assault. But Sullivan disappeared before the police could arrest him.
He planned it, and I really, really feel that he should. I just feel that he should pay with his life.
Update. 4 years later, and halfway around the world, Royal Thai police arrested James Sullivan. He was living in a beachfront condo 100 miles south of Bangkok with a girlfriend. Sullivan was returned to the U.S. and charged with murder. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Next, a young man with autism, alone, desperate, and yearning to be reunited with his parents, has disappeared. Perhaps you can help. Grand Rapids, Michigan. These are home movies of Gordon Page Jr., or Gordy, when he was just 18 months old. He was born autistic, but sadly, it wasn't until much later in his life that he was diagnosed.
I guess maybe when he was real young, we thought something was wrong, but we didn't know what. He didn't walk like other kids and run like other kids. And as he got older, you know, he'd just sit there and look around and didn't even move.
He didn't really seem unusual to us because that was our first child, and we just raised him like a normal child. I mean, he was slow. That's what we thought. He was just slow.
Just slow. Using an expression like that seems a little bit insensitive at best. But for Gordy's parents, it seemed to help make sense of their son's unusual behavior. But it could hardly explain why Gordy had such an incredible memory, especially when it came to baseball.
Russ Gibson, batting average 193.
I would say probably had 25 or 30,000 baseball cards, and he knew the names of every player, all the statistics of the cards, and he would just sit there and memorize them.
223, home runs 7.
I don't think that Gordy realized that he was slow. And then as he got older in junior high, his peers started getting ahead of him. And when he needed to go into a special ed room, it bothered him, and he had a hard time in 11th and 12th grade because he couldn't keep up with everybody who was passing him by.
Finally, Gordy did graduate from high school. He was ready for his first job. His parents helped him apply at a local grocery store.
He said, "Dad, I got the job." He said, "I start Monday, isn't that great?" And it made me feel so happy, and I dropped him off at work in the morning, and it made me feel proud as a father to see him working and to see him happy.
But soon, the store manager said that Gordy was having trouble talking to the customers.
You're carrying the groceries to my car now, and I say thank you. What do you say?
Good.
No, you say you're welcome. Okay, let's do it again.
His father's coaching was not enough. It just didn't work out at the grocery store.
Then you don't just smile at him. Let's see that nice Gordon Page smile.
Linda and Gordon were worried about their son's future. They asked a social worker to evaluate him. He was diagnosed as a schizophrenic and recommended to start living at a group home.
Finally, we agreed to try it, and we went to visit a group home. And the lady said, well, he can't stay here until he goes to see if he needs to be stabilized on medication in the hospital. So we did this, we finally agreed, and the doctor there put him on Ritalin and Valium, and Gordon wasn't Gordon after that.
Son, what?
Eventually, Gordy was accepted by a well-regarded group home. There, his medication was adjusted, and he started to feel better. With Gordy in good hands, his parents felt that they could finally relocate to Florida as they long planned. Gordy stayed behind in Michigan. For several months, things went well. But then one day, while heavily medicated, Gordy stole a truck that was left running in the driveway of the home.
We interviewed the lady who was the victim in the accident. She gave us a description which fit Gordon. Our officers then received another call from one of our elementary schools that a person fitting Gordon Page's description was at this elementary school wanting to teach a class. So we responded to there and at that time picked up Mr. Gordon Page.
Tell me about the voices that you told the doctor about Gordon.
Gordy was sent to a county hospital. There, psychiatric social worker Bill Arnold evaluated him.
He was brought in with a label of schizophrenia. People that are schizophrenic will, with medication, over a couple of week period, usually they'll start to clear up in their thinking and their behavior will come in line and they start getting back more to normal. With Gordon, that didn't work.
Tell me about your baseball card collection, Gordon.
Woody Fry, 1966, Pirate Rookie of the Year.
After several months of intensive therapy, Bill realized that Gordy was not schizophrenic. He was autistic.
Once we got him off all those medications and we started treating him as possibly an autistic and working on training and just giving him some respect, he was a totally different individual.
And we'll need you to sign this.
The Pages found a different group home in Grand Rapids, one that specialized in autism. Finally, it was time to say goodbye.
We kind of stood there and talked, and we hugged and talked a little bit more.
How you doing, son?
And then we walked over to the van, and I said, everything's going to work out.
Gordy desperately tried to get his father to take him.
It's very painful. Now, in retrospect, I wish I had allowed him just to get in and crawl back and just driven right to Florida and come home. But you don't think of those things, and we didn't know what we were going to be facing in the future.
Four days after his father left, Gordy disappeared. An eyewitness reported seeing Gordy hitchhiking towards Interstate 96, but a search of the area turned up no leads.
We love you, Gordy.
We'll never stop looking for Gordy because we love him and we've always been a close family. He would know that we want him back. And no, we will never stop looking for him.
We just want our son back. We want to be reunited as a family, and we love Gordon very much.
Gordy Page Jr. is 6 feet 3 inches tall with blue eyes and reddish brown hair. This is what he would look like today. The Pages say Gordy often gives his address as 16785 Martha Drive. It's the street Gordy lived on when he was growing up. Gordy also might respond to the names of his 2 younger brothers, Lance and Todd. If you have any information about Gordy Page Jr., please log on to our website at unsolved.com.